All right. Joining us now on the phone is the President of the United States of America, Donald Trump. Good morning, Mr. President. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Ainsley. Good morning.
Good morning. Well, we just saw Griff's report on the aftermath of Hurricane Michael. What will the recovery look like?
Well, it's going to go fast. We're going to make it go fast. We are following it in. You know, it's just about gone from the certain areas. One thing we had that was to our advantage was the speed. This thing was in and out. But we've never seen power like that. I was getting reports all night. I mean, the level of power people have not seen. 170, 180 mile an hour winds. At one point, it reached almost 200 miles an hour. So we haven't seen that before, and I guess you have 2 or 3 cases where maybe there might have been slightly stronger wind. This is in history. So it was tremendously powerful, but it was a speedster. It was in and it was out, and now it's in Georgia, and I spoke to the governor, and they are handling it very well. But, you know, the winds are down to 60 miles an hour, which is still a lot, but 60 miles an hour. It's dissipating. But it was fast.
It was fast. And I know you're a Florida property owner. I'm sure you would like to go down and visit the folks in the Panhandle. You know, you took some heat yesterday, Mr. President, for going ahead with your Pennsylvania rally last night.
Well, I think really when I explained it, there was no heat. I really had very little heat, other than the natural haters, of which there are obviously some. But, you know, we had thousands of people standing in line. It's a great thing that's happening. It's a great movement in our country. I go make a speech in a 12,000-seat auditorium, and people start lining up 2 days early. I mean, literally, they bring tents, and, you know, we had thousands of people lined up by the time I had to make a decision. So my decision was, do I want to tell people that we're waiting 10 and 12 hours already that I'm not coming? And I just thought it would be, and we're talking about thousands of people. Yep. And you saw that last night when the auditorium, which held about 12,000 people, it was full, and we had 20 or 25,000 people outside watching screens. And, you know, when they get there that early, and, you know, that area obviously is not affected at all by it, and we had it under great control because FEMA and everything else, we had White House, we had on the plane, on Air Force One. You were monitoring. Yeah, I was totally monitoring. So I went in, made the speech, everybody was happy. Otherwise, it would have been really unfair to all of the people that were waiting. And we're talking about thousands and thousands of people. It would have been very unfair. So I don't think really the heat was very hot. Relative to other things, I think it was very minor.
So, Mr. President, I know today at lunch is not going to be any normal lunch. You're going to have one of the greatest athletes and activists in American history, Jim Brown, a man who was told when he was in college that because he was black, he couldn't stay with the rest of his team with Syracuse because he was on the road, and his nose race relations at its worst, and or some of the bad times in our country, and also with Kanye West. You guys are going to talk substance. These are 2 of your supporters. What do you hope comes out of this meeting? The friendship is already there. The mutual respect is already apparent. But what substantive can come out of this meeting?
Well, Brian, you're probably seeing I have a lot of African-American support, and a lot has developed over the last little while with Kanye coming out, and Jim Brown's been there for a long time. I mean, I've known him. I've respected him. He's, you know, truly. Can you imagine him playing in the NFL today, what he'd be making? I guess he'd double what anyone else is getting. He was the greatest. And he came out a long time ago for me when it was much less fashionable, frankly. And now you see the results. We have the lowest, if you look at unemployment, if you look at any statistic, lowest unemployment rate for African Americans in history. In history, the highest median income. Think of it, highest in history for African Americans. Now, that includes also, separately, Asian Americans, Hispanic Americans. We have the best unemployment numbers, the best median income numbers. Crime rates in those communities where you have a really bad number for years. You've had terrible numbers. Those crime rates are coming down. In Chicago, which is run by Democrats, I said just yesterday, I said, we're going to get involved in Chicago. It's ridiculous what's happening in Chicago. There's no reason for it. So we're going to get involved, and we'll try and work with the mayor, if that's possible. I don't think he wants anybody's involvement, but we'll give it a shot.
Well, he's going to be out of there soon anyway. But in terms of criminal justice reform, Mr. President, Jim Brown's got a curriculum. He's been working in prisons for about 20 years with his American program. Would you be tempted to adopt his program wholesale?
Well, what's happening is Jim is really, he gets it. He very, very much gets it. And I get it. There are people in jail for really long terms who have, like Mrs. Johnson, as an example. She had another 22 years to serve. She was in there for 20 years. She's the most incredible woman. How this would have happened, and maybe it was a different time, a different age, but we do need reform. And that doesn't mean easy. We're going to make certain categories tougher when it comes to drug dealing and other things. But there has to be a reform, because it's very unfair right now. It's very unfair to African Americans. It's very unfair to everybody. And it's also very costly. You know, if you look at what they've done in Texas, they've done a great job. Now, Texas is thought of as being a tough state. And also Georgia, Governor Deal. They have done, those two states, they've done an incredible job. They're tough, they're firm, but they really have done a tremendous job with reform. And so we're looking at that with Big Jim Brown, who is an amazing guy. But I have a tremendous amount of support with African-American great athletes. You look at Evander Holyfield, you look at Herschel Walker. I have so many athletes and stars that are supporting me, because when they look at the unemployment rate, which is the best ever, when they look at the income that African Americans are making under Trump compared to what, we're talking about 2 years ago.
Right, but Mr. President,
it's so much different. So it's really been pretty amazing.
Sure. When you talk about the African American stars, one of them is Kanye West. You're going to have lunch with him today. You know, he very publicly wore the MAGA hat that we're showing right there, and he came out after Saturday Night Live, and he was talking about how he'd gotten pushed around and told not to do stuff during the week. He's taken a lot of heat for being your supporter. It's hard to be a supporter when people are ganging up on you.
Well, as far as I'm concerned, he is. I will say this. When Kanye came out very strongly a number of months ago, something happened. My polls went up like 25%. Nobody's ever seen it. It's like, he's got a big following in the African-American community, a big, big following. And I think he has in a lot of communities. But the polls went through the roof, and I have not seen that. I think I can honestly say I've never seen that before to that extent. So he is respected, and he's really a great guy. You know what he wants? He's not asking for anything for himself. He's not saying, hey, gee, I want to do this or that. He's a private guy, and he wants to help people. And I think maybe more than anything is prison reform, because his wife, who is terrific, Kim, she is the one that brought the attention to Mrs. Johnson where I could look. And you have many people like Mrs. Johnson that are in jail for another 35 years on a charge that, frankly, everything's serious. But, you know, you don't get life imprisonment because you're talking over a telephone about something.
I heard your Attorney General doesn't want prison reform. Jeff Sessions is standing in your way. Is that inaccurate?
Well, if he doesn't, then he gets overruled by me, because I make the decision. He doesn't.
Will we see you campaign out there with Kanye West in the future? I mean, I think everyone should admire him for at least being able to stand up against all of his friends out in Hollywood and support you no matter what they say. But do you think will we be seeing you on the road with him campaigning?
Well, I could see it. I mean, you know, I could see it. I went to Indiana. We took Bobby Knight, and that was a big deal. When Indiana, you have Bobby Knight, and we won Indiana by many, many, many points. And, you know, you have, I think I might have won it anyway, but when you have Bobby Knight in Indiana, I have Kanye. We have such tremendous support from so many people. And I'll tell you what, those people in Hollywood that you hear about, even the ones that do a little talking because they think it's cool, they vote for Trump. Many of them vote for Trump. I've heard so many of them vote for Trump. They get in that booth, they look around, and then they press the Trump sticker, because they do. And, you know, it's sort of a joke out in Hollywood. Obviously I have many friends out there, many Hollywood friends, but I have many friends. They're saying that so many of the people that you see talking about me, maybe it's fashionable and maybe it's not fashionable, but they vote for me. So they get in that booth and they're different, and they see that with my polling.
Right. Well,
a lot of people, they don't want to talk about it. They get in and they vote for Trump.
Somebody I don't think is going to vote for you in 2020. You are running for re-election, right?
Yes, I am.
Okay. Somebody who probably is not going to vote for you is Eric Holder, the former Attorney General of the United States. He not crazy about your agenda. And then he said this just a day or so ago. Listen to this, Mr. President.
It is time for us as Democrats to be as tough as they are, to be as dedicated as they are, to be as committed as they are. But Michelle always says that, you know, when they go low, we go high. No. When they go low, we kick them. That's what this new Democratic Party is about.
That's what this new Democratic Party is about, he said, Mr. President. And after he said, we'll kick them, the whole room started clapping and cheering. What does that say to you about the tenor of politics right now?
He better be careful what he's wishing for, that I can tell you. He's better be careful what he's wishing for.
What do you mean?
That's a disgusting statement for him to make. For him to make a statement like that is a very dangerous statement. You know, they talk about us. We are exactly opposite. You know, the rallies where they send people, I heard somebody yesterday on your show actually talking about my rallies, and my rallies are really calm and well run and packed with people. We don't have problems at our rallies, but they used to send in, they don't do it anymore. They haven't. They probably, maybe they'll try starting again. But they used to send in protesters, paid
The Democrats would send them?
And the Democrats and Soros, and they came from all over, and we'd have protesters. And I would say this, that it wasn't so successful for those protesters, but they have to be careful with the rhetoric because it's very dangerous what Holder says. I mean, Holder was held in contempt by Congress. Holder went after Christians. He went after our great evangelicals. He went after the Tea Party people. You know that. They just settled. The IRS just settled that case. Holder is... He's got some problems, and I don't see him running. And if he did run, I think he gets gobbled up before he ever gets to the election itself. I think the primaries would gobble him up.
It's interesting that he was head of the Justice Department. You said you were going to run in 2020. Some possible Democrat opponents could be Senator Bernie Sanders, Senator Cory Booker, former Vice President Joe Biden, Senator Elizabeth Warren, former Secretary of State John Kerry, Senator Kamala Harris. Which one of these would you be most worried about?
Well, so far I like every one of them. I just hope they stay healthy, and I hope they fight it out. And any one of them I'd like. I mean, I just hope that we don't get any star or good thinker coming out of nowhere, because I see everyone that's talking about it. You look at Booker, you look at Biden. I mean, how about Elizabeth Warren? She faked her heritage for years and used that. She can't prove anything. She said her mother told her she had high cheekbones, therefore she's got Indian blood. You know what? I have more Indian blood in me than she does, and I have none, unfortunately. But I have none. So you have Elizabeth Warren. Every one of them. Cory Booker ran Newark, New Jersey, when he was mayor, into the ground. But I don't want to be too harsh because I want them to be able to get through the process.
Right.
It's, any one of them. Bernie, I have to give it to Bernie. He's in there fighting. He's in there fighting. He still hasn't realized he got killed by Hillary. He got unfairly cheated by crooked Hillary. But what happened to Bernie Sanders? It's amazing. He acted like nothing happened. What happened to him was a disgrace. But Bernie's in there pitching. I saw him the other night. I said to my wife, "Look at that guy. Look at that guy. He's out there flailing and fighting." And then the announcer looked at him, the person hosting the show looked at him and said, "You know he's winning, don't you?" And Bernie just sat there. It was sort of funny.
Wow.
But no, any one of those names I like. I don't see a name that I don't like. Look, we're doing great. We're setting records with the economy. We're setting records with unemployment. New jobs are the highest they've ever been. We have more people working in the United States today than at any time in the history of our country, and by a substantial number. So with everything we're doing, I don't know, why wouldn't I do well in the election?
So one thing that Bernie Sanders, and you have respect for this, he tends to gets on issues the American people care about. He just has a different view on how to solve it. So Medicare, it turns out health care is almost #1 on almost every voter's list on the midterms. So he says Medicare for all is the answer. What is, and you wrote an op-ed against this, and then he says you're mischaracterizing what he means. What is the biggest obstacle for Medicare for all, or something that would give people insurance?
Well, let me just tell you that the problem with Bernie's plan is that you'd have to pay 4 times the taxes that you're paying right now. And one of the problems you would have is essentially, well, he's probably okay with it, but nobody else is. You'd have no money left. I mean, you'd go, everybody would go out of business. You wouldn't be able to do it. But maybe as importantly, I don't think more importantly, but as importantly, you go and you look at countries where they essentially have single-payer tax care, single-payer health care. If you look at it, they're a disaster. They come to our country when they need operations. They come to our country when they need help, assuming they have the money to do that. The level of service is so bad. I mean, essentially, the government runs it. You can take a look at what we did at the VA. Now I have choice where you're allowed, if you have to wait online for 20 days, or if you have to, I mean, some of these people are waiting 32 and 40 days to see a doctor. What happens is now under VA choice, they're able to go out, get a private doctor. We pay the bill. The vets are so happy with what we've done. Well, if you look at Bernie's plan, it's a catastrophe because basically it's government run. The government can't run anything. They've proven that.
Mr. President,
healthcare would be a disaster.
I know you traveled on Air Force One, and Rod Rosenstein was on board. You had apparently a 45-minute conversation with him. I think you were going down to Orlando for the police chiefs conference. Apparently, a number of Republican congressmen had wanted to have him on Capitol Hill today. They wanted him to be under oath, and he was reluctant to do that, reportedly. He would have preferred an informal meeting with perhaps just 1 or 2 members, not a whole hearing. But apparently, you know, we just had Greg Jarrett on, and he said that he probably didn't want to show up because he didn't want to be under oath. You know, the rumor is the day after the midterms, you're going to fire him and you're going to fire the Attorney General.
Well, I actually get along well with Rod. We have a witch hunt going on, which is disgraceful. And I have to tell you, I'll take these Republican guys with Mark Meadows and Jim Jordan and Gates and Gibbs and all of them. I hate to mention a few names because there's so many of them, and I want to give every one of them credit. These are tough, smart guys. They know there was no collusion, it turned out, with Russia. There was collusion, but it was with Hillary Clinton, the DNC. I mean, why didn't, as an example, the FBI take the DNC server? They didn't take it.
Those are all good questions.
They know where it is. I mean, there's so many questions. But one thing I'll say, these Republican folks, I think they're becoming folk heroes. These are great, great people, and they want to get to the bottom of it. And, you know, when you look at,
but Mr. President, the people in your administration, Rod Rosenstein, will not show up on Capitol Hill to
I was
because
surprised
Congress.
at that. Actually, I was surprised at that. I would think he would. He mentioned certain things to me that, you know, are very positive about that event, and I would imagine that you'd want to put that down. And frankly, whether you were under oath or not shouldn't matter.
Right.
But he mentioned things to me that I would think would be fine for him to testify. And so, you know, when Congress calls. So I'm a little surprised that Rod wouldn't do it, have a good relationship with Rod, because we work on a lot of other things.
I heard you're bonded by one thing, your distrust of Andy McCabe, and you believe,
well, Andy
is that
McCabe's
true?
a bad guy, and Comey is a bad guy. Don't forget, Comey's a very bad guy. This country got very lucky when I fired him. And as you know, Rod wrote a big memo about how horrible, you read that memo, how horrible Comey is, and he was a horrible guy. And he lied and he leaked. He lied before Congress, but he was leaking all over the place, not only through his professor, you know, his professor friend who took his stuff and leaked whatever he wanted to do. No, Comey was a bad guy, but McCabe, very bad, but he worked for Comey. Remember one thing about McCabe. His wife was running for office, and he got $750,000 from Hillary Clinton's, essentially, PAC. It was run by Terry McAuliffe, who is absolutely Hillary Clinton's best friend, and Bill Clinton. They gave him $750,000 for his wife. Nobody even knows if she spent the money. She might not have spent the money. And this was at the time that she was being investigated by McCabe. So McCabe is investigating Hillary Clinton, and her PAC, essentially, run by her best friend, is paying McCabe $750,000. To me, that's a big deal. Nobody ever mentions it. It's really, look, we've got a hornet's nest. I think I've done a great service to this country because I've exposed so much. When you look at the emails between the two lovers, Strzok and Lisa Page, and you say the insurance policy, where they're so wanting to win against Trump, but then in a moment of silence, they said, well, if that doesn't work out, we have an insurance policy. Well, the insurance policy is what has gone on for the last fairly long period of time. There was tremendous corruption, and I'll tell you what, these people want to get to the bottom of it, and I don't think people like Devin Nunes, he should get, if this all turns out like everyone thinks it will, Devin Nunes should get the Medal of Honor. He is really what he's gone through and his bravery. He should get a very important medal. Maybe we'll call it the Medal of Freedom because we actually give them. They're high awards for civilians, and he's done amazing. And, you know, guys like Meadows and Jim Jordan, all of these people, what they go through. And they're right, and they can't understand why they're being stymied at so many different levels. But now it's coming out, and it's really sad. I did a great service for this country when I fired Comey. He was a bad guy with bad intentions, and you look at the way he handled. And the one thing, just to finish up in that, you know, the Democrats hated Comey more than any human being. He actually did Hillary Clinton a big favor because she should be in jail, but they should have taken her right off the campaign. But so he did her a big favor. But the Democrats hated Comey, hated him. And I said the one thing is, when I fired him, I said I was going to get bipartisan support. And you look at Schumer and all those people, they put out horrible statements about Comey. He should be fired. Right. He's a disgrace. The minute he was fired, they came out and they said he was a wonderful man. I said, I can't believe it. I can't believe it. You think of what they said the day after he was fired. It was like from a different planet. So, you know, look, they're politicians. What can I tell you?
I'm glad you brought up firings because your wife recently had an interview and she said there are people in the White House that she doesn't trust, people you don't trust. You have to watch your back. Is that true, A? And B, if that's the case, why are they still in the administration?
Well, I think it was more true, but you have to understand, I was in Washington probably 17 times in my life. I came to Washington on the 18th time, and I said, darling, can you believe it? I'm president. I didn't know people in Washington, and now I know everybody. I know some that I wish I didn't know, but I know a lot of people. And I think now we're really, you look, Nikki Haley, as an example, did a great job. Really great job, but she's going to be replaced by somebody that's fantastic. I know, and we have 5 people. We really have 7, but
can you tell us the 5? Can you tell us the 5 names?
I can only tell you that they're really outstanding. I mean, they're top of the line, and we have great people right now working. Are there some that I'm not in love with? Yes. And we'll weed them out slowly but surely. But when you look at what we did with Mexico, with Canada, with South Korea, you look at what we did with North Korea, where that was going into a war. And now, as you know, the relationship is good. Mike Pompeo, Secretary of State, there's one. He's been fantastic. That was a change, and he's been fantastic. But he's a star. But he just got back from North Korea. So you look at what we've done. That was going to be a war, and now we have actually a good relationship. No missiles, no testing, nuclear testing, no nothing. So, you know, we've covered a lot. I say, and I say it often, that we've done more in less than 2 years than any president in the history of our country. Tax cuts, regulation cuts, all of the things we've done. Judges, by the way, I have 2 Supreme Court judges already, and Justice Kavanaugh will be fantastic. But you top that with, you take a look at who we have, Justice Gorsuch, Justice Kavanaugh, many other judges. So we've done more, I think, than anybody, and I don't even think it's close.
Mr. President, I know one thing has you concerned. Jamal Khashoggi, a Saudi working for the Washington Post, has disappeared in the Turkish embassy. They have video going in and not going out, and there's rumors that he's dead. I heard that the Washington Post reporting that you're extremely frustrated with the lack of answers. We know that Jared Kushner, your son-in-law, is very tight with the Crown Prince, and the Crown Prince calls the shots in Saudi Arabia. You're tight with him, too. What's it going to take to get some answers?
Well, we're looking at it very, very seriously. I don't like it at all. Now, you know, you don't have American citizens, but that in this case doesn't matter. I don't like it. I don't like it with respect to reporters. It's a terrible, terrible unprecedented. We can't let it happen. And we're being very tough. And we have investigators over there. And we're working with Turkey. And frankly, we're working with Saudi Arabia. We want to find out what happened. He went in, and it doesn't look like he came out. It certainly doesn't look like he's around.
What's at stake? What's at stake with
out,
U.S.-Saudi relations, sir?
I would say they're excellent. I've told them they've got to pay for their military. You know, Saudi Arabia is a very rich country. And for years and years, there would be no Saudi Arabia if there wasn't a United States, because we protected them. And we don't get paid for this protection. We should be paid. We spend billions and billions of dollars a year protecting Saudi Arabia. And I've told the king, King Salman, I said, King, sorry, you got to pay. Right. And I've said that loud and clear. And they're going to pay.
But you can't be killed. But you can't be killing America. You can't be killing Washington Post journalists. So is everything in jeopardy now, sir? Is that in jeopardy now, our good relations with Saudi Arabia?
I have to find out what happened. I mean, I do have to find out. And we're probably getting closer than you might think. But I have to find out what happened.
The Washington Post is reporting this morning that the Crown Prince, Mohammed bin Salman, ordered the operation to lure him back to Saudi Arabia from Virginia and then detain him, according to the U.S. intel intercepts of Saudi officials discussing the plan.
Okay.
That sounds like it goes right to the top, Mr. President.
Well, it would be a very sad thing, and we will probably know in the very short future. We have some incredible people and incredible talent working on it. We don't like it. I don't like it. No good.
Mr. President, let me ask you about the midterms, because historically, are you worried about people staying home for the midterms? And which states do you think that you can win?
Well, I've got so many people saying, I wish you were running. I'd be out there voting. And, you know, I'm not going to do it now because you're not running. I said, do me a favor. Do it. Just go out and vote. That's what I'm telling my rallies. Go out and vote. Because historically, whoever wins the presidency, as you know better than anybody, they don't do well in midterms. I think this is different. The economy is the best it's ever been, ever. I mean, this is the strongest economy we've ever had. And we talked about jobs before. It's the best. And I really think people are going to go out. Plus, I really think that Justice Kavanaugh, the way he was treated so horribly, this is a fine man, what they did to him and his family, the Democrats, I don't think people are going to forget that so quickly. And we're talking about really a very short period of time before the midterms. I think we're going to do very well. I can tell you there are Senate races that we weren't even going to contest that we're actually leading in. I could mention names. I won't. Maybe I'll mention one or two. Heidi was going to be, you know, win. And
North Dakota.
We have a man, North Dakota. We have a man who is fantastic. And we asked him to run the most popular. He's just a great, great person.
Kevin Kramer.
Kevin is just a great person. He's running, and he's up like 13 points.
Right.
Now, people have to still get out and vote. You have to get out and vote. But I'll tell you what, and on many of the Senate races that we didn't think we had a chance, we're going to at least do very well, and in many cases, I think we're going to win.
Okay.
The other thing is with the House, we have many races that people are going to call wrong. With that being said, what's going to happen, I don't know, but I really think the Republicans are very energized, much more so now than 2 or 3 weeks ago.
Well, Mr. President, there's a new Quinnipiac poll that came out this morning, and what had been a tight race down in Texas between Cruz and O'Rourke, Cruz has opened it up. He is now at 54%. Mr. O'Rourke is at 45. He's ahead by 9. And you're right. I think that your base right now, if last night's rally were any indication, they're energized. But the big question, sir, is how do you keep that energy up? How do you keep the Republicans and the right-leaning independents the energy up so they will vote for your side?
Well, I really think they have it naturally. I really do. And I've always felt that even before Justice Kavanaugh, if you look at over the last month or 2 months, I didn't believe the polls because I think they have tremendous energy. I think the Republicans have tremendous energy. They want to keep their 401ks really good. You know, they're up 40, 50% in 401ks. They've never had it. People are coming up to me saying, my wife is saying I'm a great investor. Thank you very much, right? You know, they want to keep that.
Yesterday was not a good day for investors.
Well, if the Democrats, well, that's fine. You know, the Federal Reserve is getting a little bit too cute. That's all. That's ridiculous what they're doing. But the Democrats you look at what they would do to it. They would knock it down. Instead of being up 50%, you'd be down 50%. When I took over this economy was ready to crash. We were at 1% GDP. Now we're at 4.2%. It was ready to crash. It was the worst. If you look from the Great Depression, it was the worst recovery in the history of our country. And Obama threw tremendous money at it. Don't forget, Obama was playing with zero money, so he was playing with funny money. It was very easy. I'm paying interest at a high rate because of our Fed, and I'd like our Fed not to be so aggressive because I think they're making a big mistake. But I'm playing with money that we pay interest. Now, that is good for people that have money in the bank and they're now able to get interest on their money for the first time in a long time. And it's good in certain ways, but they're making a mistake. They're being too aggressive.
Right. I want to talk about China if we can. We were struck when one of our battleships came within 45 yards of a Chinese ship, and we had to back out. They are extremely disturbed about your aggressive stance when it comes to trade and their stealing of intellectual property from our people. We're coming to loggerheads with that fellow superpower. Where is that heading? And is this all hands on deck with the Secretary of Defense along with the Treasury on the same page to stop them as they look to expand around the globe?
Well, sure, but you stop them economically. Look, China was taking out $500 billion a year. $500 billion, Brian, a year. I said it's not going to happen any longer. And I didn't go initially because they have helped us, and I believe they're continuing to help us with North Korea because 93% of the stuff goes through China to get into North Korea, through their border. China's been quite good. They could be better, I must say, but they've been quite good with respect to North Korea and what we're doing in North Korea, which is amazing, by the way, according to everybody. So with China, I said, you can't do this. You cannot continue to take this money out. This should have been taken care of by President Obama, President Bush. It should have been taken care of by many other presidents. They let China get out of control, and we are not going to pay $500 billion a year to China and rebuild China. We have helped rebuild China more than any other factor. We have helped rebuild it. I said, it's over. So they're not happy. They can't be happy about it. But the same thing happened with the European Union. I told them the same thing. They don't take our product, and yet they send their Mercedes-Benzes and their BMWs in to see us. It's not going to happen. But with China, because that's the big one, that's the real big one. Yep. They're taking out $500 billion. And now I put $250 billion worth of taxes or tariffs on China, and it's had a big impact.
But what's next? What's next, Mr. President?
If you look at their economy now, it's a whole different ballgame. Their economy has gone down very substantially, and I have a lot more to do if I want to do it. I don't want to do it, but they have to come to the table. I will tell you this, and I've said it, actually, I said it last night to Shannon. I will tell you that they want to negotiate. They want to negotiate badly. But I told them, you're not ready yet. You're not ready yet. They lived too well for too long, and frankly, I guess they think that the Americans are stupid people. Americans are not stupid people. We were led badly when it came to trade. And that includes with Mexico, which we've solved. It includes with Canada. It includes with everybody. And one by one, we're knocking them off. And wait till you see what happens. And that's one of the reasons we have such potential in our country, because we were doing this with these horrible trade deals, and frankly with horrible military deals where we protect wealthy countries like Japan and Saudi Arabia and South Korea, and they don't pay us. It's ridiculous. I mean, we're protecting the world and they don't pay us.
Right. Mr. President,
and when that changes, wait till you see what happens with our country. It's a different world.
Mr. President, what is the status of the wall?
The wall is being built, but it's being built in chunks that I don't like. I'm not happy with it. We're getting $1.6 billion, and we got 2 of them, and now we're getting a third under this budget. And after a lot of people, and they're friends of mine, they don't want to do anything before the election because they think we're going to do well. But right after the election, we're doing something very strong on the wall. The only thing the Democrats are good with, their bad policy, their bad everything. In many ways, they're bad politicians. The only thing they're good at is obstruction and delay. And The one thing that, we fixed our military, $700 billion for the military. They don't want to give us the wall. They fight in unison. They don't, because they think that's a good political thing. The truth is, that's good for our country. We need the wall because we have people coming in. Now, we've done a great job considering we don't have a wall. We need the wall. That's another tool of success, and we need the wall.
Well, it does sound like Kevin McCarthy, the House Majority Leader, is going to introduce a bill to fully fund it, so that's coming up. One other question. We know you're probably running short on time. One other question, though, in the Washington Post this morning, it says that you talked to the Attorney General's Chief of Staff about replacing the Attorney General. Apparently, according to the Post, you talked to Matthew Whitaker, but the conversation was nebulous, they depicted as. It wasn't clear whether you wanted him to replace him on an interim basis or he would be nominated on a more permanent basis. Anything to that story?
Well, I never talk about that, but I can tell you Matt Whitaker's a great guy. I mean, I know Matt Whitaker, but I never talk about conversations that I had. But, the Washington Post gets it wrong a lot. That's the only thing.
Yeah, but the conversation is that you are in active talks to replace the Attorney General of the United States.
I'm not doing anything. I want to get the elections over with. We'll see what happens. I'm very disappointed that we go through this witch hunt, this ridiculous witch hunt. And now even Richard Burr, who's the highly respected senator in charge of the Senate Intelligence Committee, he just came out. He said, no, there's been no collusion. He sees absolutely, this is after spending a year and a half on this stuff, there's no collusion. Devin Nunes came out. There's been no collusion from the committee in the House. Devin said no, and they came out with a very strong report. No collusion. There is no collusion. There's no collusion. There is collusion with Hillary Clinton and the Russians, but there's no collusion with the Republicans, and there's certainly no collusion with Donald Trump, and everyone knows it. And they ought to get it over with, and they ought to save a lot of money and a lot of time.
But, Mr. President, there's no collusion, but there's no conclusion either. So
well,
are they intentionally laying out now? And is there anything, and have you thought again about sitting down for an interview or write written questions or any type of hybrid approach there?
Well, it seems ridiculous that I'd have to do it when everybody says there's no collusion, but I'll do what is necessary to get it over with. They've spent tens of millions of dollars doing this, and it's a disgrace. And on top of that, you have committees in the House, in the Senate, and the House. You take a look at what they've done. They've interviewed everybody that you could imagine you could interview, and then Richard Burr stands up a few days ago and says, we found absolutely no collusion. And it's no different. There is no collusion. But it should end because it's bad for the country. Okay. And when you talk about division in the country, it's bad for the country. It's very bad. It hurts us with other countries.
Mr. President, if Democrats win the House, what happens? How will that affect your ability to get things done?
Well, I think that we're going to be successful. I see the spirit that the Republicans have, and I really believe we're going to be successful. In Pennsylvania, they redistricted certain areas, which was really unfair, in my opinion, really unfair. But I think there we're going to do well. I think state-wise, I do very well in all of these places that we're talking about. But it's not about me right now. It's about individual races. I see things happening that are very good. I think we'll be successful. And if we're not, if we lose the majority in the House, which is always a possibility, we will probably just have to fight it out. And it's a shame. It would be a shame because we'd be wasting a lot of time. But we'll just have to fight it out because there are a lot of haters, and they're just absolute haters. Now, can we get along? Maybe. And there's a possibility. They want infrastructure. I want infrastructure. There's something that can bring us together. We have a lot of things where there is commonality. And it's possible that we'll even get along. But, you know, yesterday they were talking about impeaching Judge Kavanaugh. How do you impeach him? He's like this incredible person that it turned out to be such false, horrible charges, what they did. And they want to impeach him? That's just terrible.
It's been 3 days.
There is a chance that we'll get along and get along well. We have a lot of things like infrastructure that they want and that I want.
Mr. President, big picture question. when you look at the scrutiny on your personal finances, the taxes go back to your dad, when you see your lawyer that has to cut deals and the National Enquirer buddy of yours that has to cut deals and the CFO of your company that's got immunity, and you see the pressure your family's under and 50% of the country doesn't like you and 50% will do anything for you, do you ever say to yourself, why do I need this? Why did I do this?
Well, it's certainly, I'll tell you what, I'll bet you it cost me, I see these people saying, oh, Trump gets rich being president. I'll bet you I've lost billions of dollars. It's cost me billions. I said to one of my friends, a very wealthy friend, I said, I'll bet you it cost me $2 or $3 billion, and it's worth every penny of it. I don't need the money, and it's worth every penny because I'm doing so much for the country. I mean, what I've done in terms of costs, what I've done in terms of the military, we're rebuilding the military. Very shortly, we're going to have the strongest military we ever had. Yes, it's nasty, it's vicious, it's incredible. The false reporting is so incredible. But honestly, I'm doing a great job, and that's why I have these crowds. These crowds aren't showing up if I don't do a good job. They see the difference. When they pick up $2,000, $3,000 more from taxes, all of a sudden out of nowhere,
right,
they're getting $2,000 more. That's a lot of money to people. I mean, that's a tremendous amount of money. So, yeah, it is worth it. A lot of people ask me that question. Is it all worth it? It really is worth it because, look, I've done a great job. If I didn't do a great job, I would have said, wow, that was a mistake. But I've done a great job, and we're really set to do other incredible things that people said could never be done.
Mr. President, we'll ask you like 2 more questions. We know you got to go. One of them, Ainsley had mentioned the ABC article that talked about how some people in the West Wing, Melania doesn't trust, you don't trust as well, but they're still there. Just curious, remember that anonymous article that came out a month or 2 ago?
Yeah.
And there have been some other embarrassing leaks. Are you any closer to figuring out who these people are?
Well, let me tell you about leaks. I think a lot of the leaks are not leaks. They're made up by the newspapers. The media is very dishonest, with, of course, Fox and Friends is excluded, okay? But I won't exclude Fox totally, but I will exclude Fox and Friends. No, the media is very, very dishonest, beyond anything that anybody can understand. Now, even the letter written to the Times, there is a chance, I don't say it's a big chance, but there is a very good chance that that was written by the Times. And if it wasn't, it would be a low-level, thousands of people qualified for that heading. And the Times said, we did scrutiny and we found out who this person was. Well, that means it's not a major player because they know all the players. They know who they are. But I wouldn't be that surprised because the Times is totally corrupt and dishonest. I wouldn't be that surprised. What they write is so forget it. Every day I have articles, every single day. Over the years, I appeared on the front page of the New York Times probably 4, 5, 6 times in my entire life. Now, if I have like less than 3 or 4 stories on the front page, I'm saying, gee, I guess they didn't have much to write about. But the Times is, to me, very, very dishonest, extraordinarily dishonest. If people only knew.
So you're not looking for anonymous anymore.
No. Look, how do you do that? I would like to go in there, and I'd like to find out who it is. It could have been the New York Times wrote it, to be honest. They're a very dishonest paper. Okay. It could have been the New York Times. Probably wasn't, but it could have been the New York Times.
How frustrating is that for you when you read an article and they quote you as saying something that you didn't say, or they say facts that they think they're facts, or they say they're facts and they're not? How do you overcome that?
Well, and they say sources, Ainsley. Sources say, 5 sources within the White House say, and there are no sources. They make it up. They're like novelists. There are no sources. And one of the things I have done is I've educated the public as to the dishonesty of the fake news media. I mean, and you have a big percentage of the media that is that way. And you also have some incredible people. I will say you have some incredible people in your profession, but you have some really bad people. And it's fake news, and it's a terrible, terrible thing. And they say sources, and people think, oh, gee, sources. And there are no sources. Some of these books that are written, they don't have sources for those quotes. They make them up. They literally will make up a quote, and they'll say it's a source. And it's disgusting.
Well, the
and
Bob
frankly,
Woodward book. The Bob Woodward book, it looks as though
Bob Woodward book. Now, in all fairness,
it looks like Rob Porter and Gary Cohn were the sources, at least 2 of the sources for that book. Rob Porter. How does that make you
I
feel?
was very good to both of them. I was very good to both of them, and it could have been. A lot of people have said that. Gary Cohn, and I could tell stories about him like you wouldn't believe. Gary Cohn could have been, although he issued a statement that, gee, he has great respect for the administration, et cetera, but what does that mean? It could very well have been. Don't forget, Gary Cohn never thought we could ever make this deal with Mexico, and never thought in a million years we could make the deal with Canada. He thought that that one of the reasons he left, he never thought we could make those deals. And we not only made the deals, we made phenomenal deals. And all you have to do is ask Canada, how happy are they? So it's pretty amazing what we've done. But these sources they're phony. I mean, in many cases, they don't exist. The media is very dishonest.
All right, Mr. President, Ainsley has the final question.
So
okay,
today,
good. I'm glad it's Ainsley. Give me a nice one.
Today is my father's birthday.
Oh, wow.
I forgot to send him a present.
Oh, holy cow.
I had it on the agenda. But if you wish him a happy birthday, that will be the best birthday present I will ever be able to give him.
And your father's first name is
His name
what?
is Wayne Earhart, Coach Earhart.
And is he in South Carolina?
He's in yes, sir.
Well, that's a great place. So, Wayne, I just want to say you've done a fantastic job with Ainsley. I want to congratulate you. That is not easy, but she is a terrific human being and just a great person. Happy birthday and great job. Great work.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Mr. President, my neighbor is having an anniversary next week.
I know.
All right.
We can do this for 10 minutes. Don't worry about it.
All right.
Say hello, Ainsley. That's very nice.
Thank you.
And Mr. President, thanks so much for joining us this morning.
Thank you, Brian. Thank you very much. Thank you all. Your show is a fantastic show. Just keep it going.
God bless you. Thank you so much.
Thank you
Thanks
very
for
much.
watching.
Goodbye.
Go run the country.